Chargers star quarterback Justin Herbert has just finished his third regular season, and don't let the numbers fool you, he's better now than he's ever been.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 7 seasons in our second postseason now this year, and this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys for making us your first listen today. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. And David, the Chargers regular season is over now. We wanted to take a look at Justin Herbert because he's put up some career low numbers in a lot of ways, but there's been a lot of other factors that have gone into that as well. And to me, I think that he's still playing right now as good as we've ever seen from him. But I do want to get into our buy or sell today with the biggest Charger storylines and overreaction. And I think some people think Justin Herbert may have regressed in 2022. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about if the Chargers offense has figured some things out over the last couple of weeks of the season. And if Brandon Staley is now back on the hot seat after we really said, hey, he's safe. He made the playoffs with a very injured roster. But then Sunday shenanigans happened, right? Does that change anything for Brandon Staley? Does he maybe have to win a playoff game against Jacksonville now? We're going to talk about that, as well as talking about if this Chargers defense is somehow better without Derwin James. Spoiler alert, I don't think so. And we'll also get into if the Chargers should be favored against the Jacksonville Jaguars, because in some places they are the favorite heading on the road to Jacksonville this week. But we have to get started, Dave, by telling you guys that this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Just pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win. And if you win, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. Promo code Locked On. All right, Dave, let's get into our buy or sell here, and we'll start with this. Justin Herbert regressed in 2022.
Yeah, I think if you look at that and you look at the numbers on the surface level, you say, oh, yeah, he's definitely regressed. I mean, last year he threw for 5,000 yards and 38 touchdowns, also rushed for 3 touchdowns. So, of course, he regressed. He only had 25 passing touch. No, that's not the entire story. You have to look at it with the context involved in this and the amount of injuries that he has had to overcome, including his own. And still be able to navigate this season and take the Chargers to the playoffs. Justin Herbert definitely did not regress. I think he showed his toughness. I think he showed his ability to dissect defenses. And just like every other year in the NFL, he has showed his otherworldly arm talent.
All of those things for sure. I mean, but yeah, you see a career low in touchdowns, passer rating, yards per attempt, QBR. Like those are big counting stats, right? Those are the things people look at for quarterbacks a lot of the time. And I get it. I mean, there's a lot of tough games in the schedule for Justin Herbert this year, but then you factor in, Keenan Allen missed 9 games pretty much this season. If you're counting, the games he actually played and looked like himself in. And the offensive line was much worse this year than it was last year. And I think that's another factor that people aren't necessarily taking into account. That and, missing your 2 biggest weapons, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, for big portions of the season, missing Donald Parham, right, for big portions of the season, having the regression of the Chargers offensive line, guys like Matt Filer not playing as well, trying to start a rookie at right guard with Zion Johnson. It's been an up and down ride for the Chargers offense all season long, but Justin Herbert had to do more than he's ever done this season, and he had to carry this team as much as he's ever had to carry the team this season. No running game, a beat up offensive line that hasn't been playing well, playing without his best weapons and going into some games with Josh Palmer and Michael Bandy and DeAndre Carter as his top weapons. I think there are tangible ways that Justin Herbert has improved. I think his processing has improved a ton. I mean, the dude's a super robot and a supercomputer in his brain. He gets through his progressions like crazy. I think that his eye movement and manipulation has been a lot better this year as far as looking off safeties and things like that. And I think his mechanics are a lot better too. I don't think you're seeing a lot of just poorly placed balls by Justin Herbert. The ball placement is crazy. He's throwing to all parts of the field and throwing into insanely tight windows.
And cut down his interceptions too.
Exactly. I mean, this season he's had to throw into tighter windows than he's ever had to, and he still is, matching his career low with 10 interceptions, which he had his rookie year and 2 less games. But if you look back at these interceptions, I mean, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 really bad decisions
Yeah.
in there out of those 10 interceptions. So there are tangible ways, David, and I just think that he is getting better. This is still the best version of Justin Herbert we've seen. I mean, he's been really, really good over the last 2 weeks, and he's been hampered by, play calling, missing star players, offensive line, and all that. And it's still, David, a blank check, right? That's the other thing here. I mean, Justin Herbert is available to sign an extension after this season, and there's nothing that's happened this season that's not making me just hand this dude a blank check.
Absolutely not. I mean, given all of those things that we just talked about, again, he still took his team to the playoffs. For the first time, the Chargers have been in the playoffs since 2018. Justin Herbert is a major, major reason why the Chargers are sitting here with an opportunity to win a championship. They are one of 14 teams that have that opportunity. This is what you ask for. And so through all the adversity, I mean, this is how you really identify who somebody is. Who are they when things aren't always going their way? When you have to overcome all the injuries, when you have to overcome a defense that's been giving up 5.5 yards per carry for pretty much the entire season. Justin Herbert has had to do unbelievable things. And yes, he is still one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. There is still about 30 other teams that would love to have a Justin Herbert, but they don't. The Chargers do, and that's why the Chargers have to make sure that they sign him to a very long contract with a lot of money, a lot of zeros, make him nice and comfortable because he needs to be the Chargers quarterback for the foreseeable future.
And I think a lot of people have kind of told on themselves a little bit with how they've kind of talked about Justin Herbert so far this year,
Yeah.
right? A lot of box score hunting from some of these people out here that want to talk about regression with Justin Herbert, not realizing what he's going out there and some of the superhuman feats he's been able to accomplish this year with the game winning drives, the miraculous end of game throws, keeping the Chargers in it and putting this team on his back. I mean, he's done so much this year from a leadership standpoint and
Yeah.
just from a getting better standpoint, fighting through everything, not having a single negative thing to say the entire season. The dude's just as steady as it comes. And that's what you want as you head into the playoffs. But the Chargers need their offense to show up in the playoffs. And they have had some pretty good performances over the last 2 weeks, even though it probably doesn't feel like it from Sunday. So this buy or sell is this, David. The Chargers offense has actually figured some things out over the last 2 weeks of the season.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to buy that they have figured some things out. And I think a large part of that has to do with what they have done in the red zone. I mean, that's what's been really, really important is that when you get into the playoffs, it's all about scoring touchdowns, okay? And the Chargers over the last 3 games have scored touchdowns on 72.73% of their drives in the red zone. That right there is cash money. That's exactly what you want. You want to have that figured out when you're going into the playoffs when possessions are at a premium, and you have to make sure that you hit that payoff and get those touchdowns. That's what the Chargers have been doing on offense as of late.
Especially when you're going up against the offenses and teams that they're going up against, right?
Yeah.
Like if you really want to make a deep run, one of these is going to turn into a shootout, and you're going to have to keep up. In the Jacksonville Jaguars game, the first time they played each other, I mean, that game was a lot closer than it looked. The Chargers offense totally stalled out in the second half, and the Chargers defense got worn out and just really couldn't contain them anymore. And I
Yeah.
mean, that definitely played a big part of that. Also, Justin Herbert, just having fractured his rib cartilage made a pretty big difference in that game as well. But I think that as far as this offense goes, there's still inconsistencies in the running game. You don't feel a lot better about that, even though you did after the Rams game a little bit. One of their best rushing performances kind of went away again, right? And it looks like this team is still pretty one-dimensional. I mean, I do think that the best part of these last 2 games for the Chargers is I do think Joe Lombardi called 2 of his best games of the season in back-to-back weeks. So like that is something I think you can hang your hat on and feel good about. Then again, you have the drops and the fumbles and the things that last week really totally turned that game sideways, even when they had their starters in there. So a lot of things to clean up. I think headed in the right direction, getting the tight ends involved in the red zone, getting Keenan Allen 2 red zone touchdowns
Yeah.
this past week was really nice to see. So that has been a marked improvement for this Chargers offense, and they're going to need that. Yeah, you can't trade field goals for touchdowns in the playoffs and expect to make a deep run and be a contender. But there's also another thing from this game we have to talk about, which is Brandon Staley. We vented about it yesterday. We said a lot of things, but we also said he was probably safe from being eliminated as Chargers head coach after the season because he made the playoffs with this roster. And then Sunday happened. So is he still safe? Does he have to win a playoff game? We're going to get into that and also talk about the Chargers defense and specifically Derwin James making it worse somehow, and also maybe a lack of effort from the Chargers in this last game defensively. There's an argument to be made, and we're going to get into that coming up right after this. But first, I need to tell you guys about my favorite daily fantasy app, and of course, I'm talking about PrizePicks. What I love about PrizePicks is it's super easy. All you have to do is go on there. They have the projections for you, and you just have to beat PrizePicks. You don't have to go up against somebody with a random team that you don't know and not know if you're going to have like 8 of the same players as that person, like some other fantasy sites are. With PrizePicks, you just pick 2 to 5 players, and if you win up to 10 times your money on that entry, and you're just basically going on Justin Herbert more or less passing yards, or Austin Eckler, or Keenan Allen more or less receptions. There's so many things you can do, and it's not just football. It's MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, MMA, esports, whatever you're looking for. You can find projections and make your entries at PrizePicks, and the entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's really fast. I've made a ton of them, and they always have safe and fast withdrawals. So download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a $100 instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. 100% instant deposit match. You give them $100, you'll get $100. If you put in 50, you'll get 50. And don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for that instant deposit match up to $100. I also need to tell you guys how you can not do your taxes with TurboTax. At TurboTax, you don't have to do your taxes because you can meet up with an expert who will do it for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from your stress of taxes and file for you so you do not have to do them. You can instead do not taxes. You can show your eyes things that are not taxes. You can unpack a moving box of not taxes. You can sing not taxes a lullaby. You can hope not taxes or help not taxes sleeps at night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. Basically, there's a ton of other things you could be doing besides your taxes. Let TurboTax take care of those for you so you can do all the other fun things you'd rather do instead. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right so you can relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? You can feel that way right now with TurboTax. So come to TurboTax and do your taxes, or don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com and learn more. Intuit TurboTax. Full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Let's get back to this buy or sell here, David. And I want to talk about the Chargers' main man, Brandon Staley. And if anyone follows me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, shameless plug, you would see that I vented a lot about the Chargers and their decision making to play their starters until the fourth quarter in that game
Sure did.
on Sunday against the Broncos. Yeah, I thought it was stupid. I still think it was pretty dumb. There's arguments to be made, right? I mean, the Chargers needed reps. I've seen out there, right? They're not a good enough team to go out there and not take every possible chance to get better. I understand some of that. Could have been much less. There was nothing getting gained from this team, I thought, and midway through the second quarter on to me. But it has changed a little bit, I think, what the perception of Brandon Staley is. He really kind of got the fan base on his side, and then seemed like he really lost all of that, right, that he had gained with the Chargers' hot defensive stretch in one game in the last game of the season after coming off, back-to-back defensive shutouts in the second half and so much other good stuff he had done. So, David, the situation has changed a little bit. So the buy or sell is this. Brandon Staley is still safe no matter what, even after Sunday's disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to look at the recency bias of what has happened and say, oh, he's definitely got to win a playoff game if he's going to stay on with as the Chargers head coach. But let's also look at it, from a full bird's eye view. He's taken the Chargers to the playoffs in his second year as a head coach of the Chargers, with all of the things that has gone just unbelievably wrong this season. Honestly, I don't think there's any single thing that Brandon Staley could do at this moment in time for him not to get a third year as the Chargers head coach. And I say that quite confidently.
And I understand people's frustrations. I don't think there's any way Brandon Staley gets canned. But there is the wild card of Sean Payton, right? And we know the Chargers in recent years have gone big game hunting, right? We knew they tried to make a play for Urban Meyer, which thank God that didn't happen. Tried to make a play for Tom Brady when he ended up going to win a Super Bowl. Either way, I mean, since they've moved to LA, they've had some, big splashes, at least in their targets. They haven't really done any of them. Brandon Staley was not a big splash hire by any means. They spent a ton of guaranteed money in free agency, but that's about it as far as things you can say, hey, they're going all in. It would be an unprecedented hire for the Chargers. It would be an unprecedented firing by the Chargers as well with Brandon Staley. I mean, Mike McCoy and Anthony Lynn both made the playoffs within their first 2 years. I'm pretty sure Norv Turner did as well. So that's not everything. But we know what the Chargers had to deal with this season, obviously. But when you have Justin Herbert as your quarterback, the standards are set higher. So I do think, Sean Payton is the ultimate wild card. I don't think the Chargers will be willing to give him the money that he wants. I don't think the Chargers will be willing to send the draft pick, right, that they would have to send a first plus to the Saints for his services. But I do think that Sean Payton would absolutely love to get back in the game and coach Justin Herbert. And that is a wild card. Besides that, I don't think Brandon Staley is getting fired, even though I have had some issues, right? I thought he played the starters too long, obviously, in that game. It was
I
clear to
agree.
me.
Yeah.
I also think it was the wrong decision to put Justin Herbert out there the game after he fractured his rib cartilage against the Jacksonville Jaguars when they were down 28 points.
I
So,
agree with that too.
there is a troubling pattern there for me of just not being able to see the big picture in that way. I mean, you can argue they needed the reps, whatever. You left your franchise quarterback out there way too long and you gave him a chance to get injured. Did you get away with it? Yes, right. But it's process over results. Just because it didn't go horribly bad doesn't mean it couldn't. Those dudes were out there long enough where they could have gotten really, really major injuries, which can happen in any game. But every other game is not a meaningless game. And that was the whole point of that. But I think his job is safe at this point. I'm a Brandon Staley fan. I like a lot of the things he does. Then sometimes he just does really, really head scratching things.
Yeah, a
But
couple of those things are like, what is going on here? But yeah, for the most
yeah,
part,
for sure. I mean,
yeah.
like a puppy is looking at himself in the mirror for the first time. Yeah. But anyways, I want to get to the defense and stick with Brandon Staley's unit here because we saw them super hot for a month. They were the hottest team in the NFL defensively, right? Then it went away. A lot of people have been accusing the Chargers of poor effort defensively in the last game. The Chargers defense wasn't really trying. David, are you buying or selling that? The defense's performance, the bad performance was due to poor effort.
I think that you can reasonably deduce that it's quite possible that a lot of those Chargers players knew that, this game meant nothing and that they want to make sure that they save themselves to be able to put on their best performance in the playoffs. But I think we also saw a couple of things that we didn't like, which was the run defense. It looked like the run defense we saw for 13, 14 games. And that's one thing I point to and say that is not what you want going forward. I mean, the Jacksonville Jaguars have a running back that went over 1,100 yards that you're going to be seeing in the first round of the playoffs. And that's not what you want to put on tape, whether, you're playing with good effort or not. I mean, that's one thing that can be exploited and teams have exploited all season long.
And it's tough with the run defense because if you're going to question them in this game, you kind of have to question their effort for the other, 15 games they've been terrible in run defense this year. So, it's kind of tough in that regard. But, there's a few plays, right? Like Alohi Gilman gets beat on that 57-yard pass to Jerry Jeudy, where he basically gave up on the play. I don't think he gave up on the play because the Chargers had the game clinched. I don't think he thought Russell Wilson had gotten out of the pocket or didn't think he could make that throw or something. There's no excuses. But the just overall physicality, I mean, the bad tackling, that's where I feel like you could say, hey, maybe we didn't see them going all out. But the thing is NFL players, I think, know for the most part, if you play slow in a fast game with grown adults running at you full speed and the best athletes in the world running at you, you're more likely to get hurt that way. So the thought the Chargers weren't going as hard to not get hurt, I think is a really backwards logic because I don't think that's really the way it works. It's hard to question a player's effort because you're basically questioning their integrity. So I mean, Alohi Gilman, I don't think that was why that happened to him. But the Chargers defense definitely lacked some juice in this game, and I think it's impossible for these players to not realize the game isn't important, that they don't need it, to have the same amount of hunger for a game that doesn't matter as they would for a game that has the playoffs on the line. I don't think we would have seen the defense that flat had that been Week 18 against the Raiders last year.
Yeah.
Either way, there's still some things that are concerning, right? I mean, there's things that are concerning that have been concerning all year long. This game didn't help that.
No.
I would buy this. I trust the Chargers defense less after last week, right? After really kind of building up some trust in them the month before that, it's impossible for me to just totally write that off without seeing that there's some reality in how bad they were in that game against the Broncos and some reality in, hey, there's some things that the Chargers defense still hasn't worked out in a big margin. But we do have more to get into, and I think, they're better than what they showed on Sunday, and they will play better this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars than that terrible performance we saw against the Broncos. But I do want to talk about the Jaguars, and I also want to talk about Derwin James because he came back into this game, and it happened to be coincidentally, the worst Chargers defensive performance in a month and a half. Are the Chargers better without Derwin James defensively? And we'll also get into if the Chargers should be favored in this game against the Jaguars, even after getting blown out by them earlier on in the season. But I do think it is the best matchup that they could have gotten this wild card round. So we're going to break it down coming up right after this. But first, I need to tell you guys that the official betting sponsor of the Locked On Chargers podcast is BetOnline.net. BetOnline not only gives you the best platform and the best place to place your bets, but it's also the number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball to the World Cup. They've got it all at betonline.net, and even got the Women's World Cup, the Powerhouse USA coming up this year. I'm excited about that this summer. Go USA. But if you love sports podcasts, you can also find that, and you can find a lot of other information to help you make your bets at BetOnline. And right now, BetOnline has the Chargers-Jags game as a pick'em, which is better than most places. If you want to bet on the Chargers, that's better than you're getting, because some places even have the Chargers favored right now. So if you want to get on that action, it's not just that. You can bet, is it going to go to overtime? Will there be a safety? Who's going to score first? There's so many fun bets at BetOnline. And you can also just bet on the normal things, the over-under and everything like that, and live in-game betting, so you can change your fortunes in real time. But they're always the fastest and easiest way to get all of your betting info. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to go to BetOnline, where the game starts. David, I do want to talk about something else. A lot of these buy or sells are kind of things that we see on Chargers social media, see on Chargers Twitter, right? And the things
Yeah.
that people are throwing out there as far as what the Chargers' biggest problems are. And this is kind of like a Mythbusters type of an episode, that we do every week to some extent. One of the things that has been out there that's kind of hard to totally refute because of the results that have happened when he hasn't been out there is that the Chargers defense is better without Derwin James, which is patently insane. So, David, I ask you this. I mean, is there any chance, buy or sell, that the Chargers defense is actually better without all pro safety Derwin James?
Of course the Chargers defense is better without Derwin James. Duh. No, of course not. Come on, get out of here with that nonsense. I'm sorry. I just don't understand when I see people come to this conclusion when they realize how many different things that Derwin James is doing for the Chargers. All you need to do is look at the snap counts, okay? 63 at defensive line, 330 in the box, 270 snaps at free safety, 154 in the slot, 18 at corner. He is literally all over the place. No matter what you ask him to do, he is capable of doing it. He can shut down your number one wide receiver. He can cover your best tight end. It doesn't matter. Oh, by the way, he can also rush the passer. He's one of the better pass rushers as a defensive back in the league.
Yeah.
Derwin James is an eraser. He's a guy that if you need to take somebody away, he can do that. So no, there's no way on earth that the Chargers defense is worse when Derwin James is on the field.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of explanations to it. The biggest explanation is you went up against a lot of really bad offenses during that stretch, during that month, because Derwin James missed, the 4-game winning streak for the most part outside of the game against the Colts, right? He played a little bit, then got ejected. So, every other game besides that during the 4-game winning streak, he was out. So, it is crazy that they had their best defensive performances of the season for sure. Back-to-back defensive, second half shutouts in the last 2 games before the Broncos game. That was crazy, and it was an outlier. But the thing is like even when Derwin James got into that game against the Colts, you see him get an interception early in that game, right? You see him absolutely light somebody up, which is 4 inches away from just being a gigantic hit that stops the runner short of a first down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was inches away on a play like that.
For sure.
Did he need to work himself back into this one? Was he not all there potentially in this last game? Yeah, I mean, there might be some, time that he has to take to get back involved. I think it has more to do with how they're using him. You have to use a dude like that all over because that is what he's best at. And you can just make it so much harder for offenses to key in on him, right? If you just keep him deep, it's a lot easier to be stay away from that dude. If you have him,
because you got to know where Derwin is. You have to.
I mean, and the thing is people saying, well, maybe that's making the rest of the defense worse because they're having to move around. Most of these guys probably aren't moving around to positions they haven't played. So I think that's a cop-out for them. I think it is coincidence that the Chargers play better without Derwin James because he's an all-pro player. He's one of their best rushers. He's one of their best, ball hawks that they have on the team, and he's shown that multiple times. He's just a great player, and he brings a certain level of speed and physicality that they're sorely lacking when he's not
leadership
on the field. Yeah, and of course, leadership for sure. So I think it's going to regress to the mean. The Chargers defense, if they can do it without him, they can be even better with him. And obviously, Joey Bosa back in the mix as well. But let's get to this upcoming game, David. Giant playoff game, first playoff game since 2018. And like I said, I mean, BetOnline has it as a pick 'em. Some people even think the Chargers should be favored in this game. Some have them as a 1-point favorite in this one, which seems crazy because the Jaguars blew the Chargers out. The Chargers are coming off of a bad loss to end their season, obviously in weird circumstances. Should the Chargers should be favored against the Jaguars, David, buy or sell?
Yeah, I'm going to buy, and the reason why I'm going to buy is because styles make fights, and I think right now this style favors the Chargers. The Chargers are going up against the Jaguars team that's 28th in the league in passing yards allowed, and the Chargers are one of the better passing offenses in the NFL. So they should have a lot of openings attacking this secondary that is not very good. And they're not that good against the run either. I mean, they're giving up 4.7 yards per rush this season. So there's yards to be had on the ground, and there are yards to be had through the air, a lot of them. And the Chargers are much, much healthier than they were when they faced the Jaguars in week 3. They are a completely different team. They're a battle-tested, battle-hardened team. They're going to get after the quarterback a lot more effectively. Yes, I think the Chargers should be favored over the Jaguars in this playoff game.
Yeah, I disagree. I would sell that for sure because, I mean, I
Okay.
think with the Chargers, I mean, first of all, you saw them get blown out, of course. It was a very different game for sure. But the Jaguars have also been even hotter than the Chargers have been over this last stretch, right? They've won 6 out of their last 7, and they have better wins on their resume than the Chargers do. They beat the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. They beat the Cowboys at full strength. Like, they have beaten better teams than the Chargers have beaten.
They have some horrendous losses, though, too. Lost to the Colts, lost to the Texans.
Let me finish. They also lost 13-6 to the Texans. There you go. See, I mean, there are a more sporadic team, but a lot of those games happened way earlier in the season. So as much as we say the Chargers have changed since they last faced each other, this is a much different Jaguars team than the Chargers faced then, right? They went on to lose like their next 4 out of their next 5 games after they smoked the Chargers in that game. They produce a lot of a lot of problems for this Chargers defense, I think, for sure. I mean, ETN can definitely take one to the house. He has, home run hitting speed, and the Chargers have given up a lot of explosive runs, especially over the last 2 weeks again recently. The Jaguars have been the better team, probably, at least the second half of the season, they've been the better team. I'm surprised that the Chargers are favorites in this one, especially we don't necessarily know the full extent of the Mike Williams part of it yet. He's supposed to play. What kind of shape is he going to be in? Obviously, if he's fully healthy, you feel a lot better about it. If he's not, that makes you feel a lot worse about it. So I think it would be an upset if the Chargers pull it off. I think they can do it, but to say that they, should be favored, I mean, I think Pick'em is probably right around where it should be. I mean, the Jaguars didn't look great in their last game. They still won with the playoffs on the line against the Titans in the last game, where the Chargers brought their starters out and got embarrassed a little bit by the Broncos in a meaningless game. So I think it's really close, but I probably would favor the Jaguars, at least at this point, just with how good they've been. Chargers have, definitely the edge rusher. They have the edge at quarterback. But Trevor Lawrence has played pretty darn good. I mean, he's been like a top 5 quarterback the second half of the season. I think the Jaguars defense and offense have both been better points per game wise than the Chargers have. They've scored more points than the Chargers have this year, and they've given up less points than the Chargers have this year. So that's the only reason I wouldn't say necessarily the Chargers should be favorites in this one. But I do think it's a better matchup for the Chargers than the other teams they could have got. So the buy or sell last one here, David, is the Chargers got the best possible wild card matchup for themselves with the Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna buy that. I think it is the best matchup for the Chargers, and it's because of that weak pass defense. I mean, we all know that Justin Herbert and the Chargers go as far as Justin Herbert is going to take them, and so I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities. And I'm just happy that Justin Herbert is playing at the level that he is playing at right now, and finishing the season hot, getting into the end zone multiple times, and really just seeming to make good decisions. Coupling that with Joe Lombardi opening up the playbook a little bit more and attacking a little bit more down the football field, I think are all reasons why I feel good about this particular game.
To me, it's not even that kind of in depth. I mean, it's just I'd rather play them than the Bengals or the Bills. I
For
think
sure.
that both.
Yeah.
I mean, because the Chargers couldn't have gotten the Ravens, right? They couldn't
Right.
have gotten the Dolphins. They're a wild card team, so they had to get either one of the Bills, Bengals, or the Jaguars. And the thing is, too, the Chargers couldn't have played the Chiefs, which I think is the next team where you're like, hey, at least you've seen the Chargers play them close, right?
Yes.
The nice thing about this way, David, is that the Chargers win, they do get the Chiefs, right? That's their
Yes.
second. They get to play the Chiefs to go to the AFC Championship game
Yeah.
if they can win this weekend. And I think that is the right path. I think you
Yes.
do want to see the Chiefs in the second round if you're going to have to play one of those big 3 teams anyways. As terrifying as it is to go up against, Patrick Mahomes, I think the Josh Allen and Joe Burrow both have better teams around them, right?
Well,
And
and
they
it's the
both
devil
also
you
beat the
know
Chiefs
versus the
too.
devils you don't, and I think that's
Exactly. I
a
mean,
big
and the
part of it.
Chargers are a couple of calls away from winning both those games, right? As many Chargers fans will tell you, like they
Yep.
did not get very much, luck in either of those games. Plus, Justin Herbert got hurt in one of those games where they played terribly in the second half offensively and threw a 99-yard pick six that ended up losing them that game, right? So, like, I think this is the best possible route for the Chargers to
Yeah.
make a deep run is the one that they got. I mean, the Jaguars are not easy. The Chiefs are not easy. They will not be favored against the Chiefs when they get that matchup if they can make it past the Jaguars first. This is the better of the two poisons in a pick your poison situation,
Yeah.
right? This is the one that's going to kill you quickly as opposed to making you suffer, I think. And I think this is a team the Chargers very well can beat.
Yeah.
What version of the Chargers are we going to see? Both of these teams have been inconsistent. We just don't know that. It'd be foolish to think that at this point we can have a huge level of confidence to just say, hey, the Chargers are the better team, which I think they are. I think they're the more talented team as well.
Yeah.
Does that automatically mean they're going to go in there and win? It doesn't, because they
No.
haven't really given us the confidence in them that they can go do that. They beat bad teams this year. They haven't beat good teams. And even when the Chargers played the Jaguars early in the season, I thought the Jaguars were a good team. And then they just went on to lose like 5 games in a row. But this is a good team they're going up against, and a team that's been battle tested and basically already played a playoff game this year to get into the dance. So it's going to be a scary team for the Chargers to play. And so is everyone. It's the AFC. It's the playoffs. There's no easy games. You're going to have to go through pretty much everyone anyway. So we will be back this week getting into all of the different playoffs, situations the Chargers could get themselves into, including tomorrow getting into our Chargers mailbag. If you guys want to get in on that action, make sure to hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnLAC. We're going to put a questions post out there. Make sure you get your questions in there, or call into the Locked On Chargers voicemail line at 323-524-7924. Make it about 30 seconds. It has a high chance of getting on the show. But thank you guys again for making us your first listen today. Make sure you never miss the show. Go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever. You can also find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogemeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD. You can also find us on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page and at Locked On Chargers on Instagram. We post the show to all of those places every day. If you guys need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you the local insights that you love in the national spotlight with daily conversations of the NFL's biggest stories. If you want to keep up with everything going on around the league, Locked On NFL is where you go. But we will be back with you guys tomorrow with our Chargers mailbag, getting into all of your questions because the Chargers are in the playoffs. So make sure you get your questions in. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.